One of the longest prevailing, hate recorded in human history is the hatred toward Jews, what we call anti-Semitism. This hatred toward Jews had the fact, just not just an opinion, but it had created a very severe effect on Jewish life for thousands of years. And in this lecture, I would like to present to you the different sides and aspects of anti-Semitism. This is the term that is being used, anti-Semitism, to describe hatred toward Jews. So let me start the PowerPoint. So I will start with a definition. This is a definition that was adopted by the Anti-Defamation League, which is a Jewish organization that records hatred and attacks on Jews. And this is how they defined it. The belief or behavior hostile toward Jews just because they're Jewish. It may take the form of religious teachings that proclaim the inferiority of Jews, or, for instance, or political efforts to isolate, oppress, or otherwise injure them. It may also include prejudice or stereotyped views about Jews. So what we see here is a definition that is identifying teachings and violence and prejudice and political action against Jews. It all falls under the definition of anti-Semitism. So when we are looking at the history of anti-Semitism, and this is a long history of thousands of years, we typically divide it to two different phenomena. One is Christian or religious anti-Judaism. So it's a prejudice against a religion and those who follow that religion. And this had been the case of anti-Judaism during ancient and medieval times, or racial anti-Semitism, which is what identifies the Nazi persecution of Jews. And nowadays we see another development in anti-Semitism, which is the hatred toward the state of Israel. But this is something that we are not going to talk much today about. And Christian anti-Judaism led to centuries of religious persecutions, while racial anti-Semitism led to the Holocaust and the murder of 6 million Jews in Europe during 1939 to 1945. So you see, I call it anti-Judaism, anti-Semitism, and we'll explain the difference between the two. So where does the hatred toward Jews in Christian text come from? It's coming from the accusation that nowadays, by the way, all Christian, maybe not all, but most mainstream Christian organizations completely reject, and they made public declarations about it very clearly. The Roman Catholic Church and other churches say that this should not be viewed like that. But this is the accusation. The Jews are responsible for Christ's death. Hatred of Jews is the product of blaming Jews for the death of Jesus. And where do they get this blame from? It's coming from the Christian text, from Matthew 27. This is what it's written. When Pilate, who was the governor of Jerusalem at that time from Rome, saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I'm innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. So maybe we need to just to pause for a second. So there were two people that Pilate asked the audience that he needs to spare one. One was a thief and one was Jesus. And he asked the crowd, you decide who should receive the pardon and who will go to the cross, the thief or Jesus. And he basically said, you decide, it's your responsibility. And the people answered, his blood is on our hands and our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. So basically, according to the Christian text, the Jews said, we want to kill Jesus. His blood is on our hands and on our children. So the curse that we will receive from choosing Jesus will follow also to our children and grandchildren and everyone. It's on the bloodline. Yes, so every Jew ever existed that was there and was not there, was there and was not there. Every Jew, it doesn't matter who, what, why, is to blame. Even 2,000 years later, that person is still to blame. That's how Christians read this verse. Now, I have to say that today, and from the 1960s, most churches do not blame the Jews today for the death of Christ 2,000 years ago. But this is how they used to read it only until the 1960s. So, because Jews are responsible for the death of Christ, once Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire, laws of discriminations were created in order to, punish them. So, what you see, the man you see in the picture, his name is Saint Augustine of Hippo. And he was a very significant leader of the church at the time where Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century. And he drafted the church attitudes. Jews should be permitted to dwell in Christian lands under laws of discrimination and unequal treatment. They would be converted to Christianity at the end of times. So basically he said, no, we will allow them to live. So all the pagans, the Roman Empire was pagan, yes? So big effort was made into converting them to Christianity. It took time, We have record that only until the 10th century, from the 4th, it took 600 years for the Roman Empire to become Christian. But it took 600 years, but the rule about Jews was that, okay, they can live next to Christians. So in Rome, there can be a Jewish section. But Jews have to understand that they are not equal to Christians. And if Christianity is the religion of the empire, and Jews prefer not to become Christians, then they have to understand that they're going to be second-grade citizens. They have to pay higher taxes. They cannot live with Christians. They cannot marry Christians. They cannot have certain professions. They cannot. So all kinds of things that discriminate them and turn them into second-grade citizens. And Augustine also believed that, when the second coming of Christ will happen and Christ will come back, Jews will convert then. So during medieval Europe, Jews were expelled from from some Christian lands, like in France, England, Spain. The biggest case was actually in Spain in the 15th century. And Jews were limited to live in certain quarters, which they call them ghettos. So this is where the word ghetto coming from. It's the Jewish quarter in every major city in Europe. And Jews were also persecuted based on basically based on rumors, based on conspiracy theories, and this is what you see in the picture. So they are called the blood labels. So there was a conspiracy. The Jews used the blood of Christian boys in order to drink their blood, like vampires, and to use the blood of a Christian boy in order to bake matzah on Passover. So this is what you see in the picture, yes? These are the Jews kidnapped a boy, a Christian boy, and you see blood is draining from him. So they drain the blood down, and then they use the blood for their rituals, like vampires. And this was a very common belief in medieval times, and it was used against Jews again and again and again. It started in England, and then it went all over, Europe. And whenever those accusations came by, typically it ended up with a pogrom. Jews have been killed, Jews have been murdered, Jews have been brought to the stake, burned on the stake. This was a typical, result of those accusations. Now, as I said, the modern times brought a new understanding of anti-Semitism. Now it's already racism. So what is a racism, a definition? Racism is a modern theory that argues that biology determines the history and culture of a certain group of people. Racism is not operative if members of a stigmatized group can voluntarily change their identities and advance to position of prominence and prestige within the dominant group. It means like if a Jew converts to Christianity and then he can become a professor at the university. So this is not racism, yes? Racism says that, every Jew has a unique characteristic that identified him as part of his biology and therefore makes him inferior to other people. Yes, so this is how the ideas of racism were used in order to discriminate against Jews by saying that Jews have just their biology is fucked up. Their biology is bad. They have like characteristics, biological characteristics, they are stabbing people in the back. They're just in love with money. They control people from behind the scenes. This is their biology. This is what the racist argument says, and this is their biology, and therefore they should be discriminated. They should be protected from, because in their biology, in their essence, in their DNA, they're just bad people. So racial anti-Semitism had led to the Holocaust. The opponents of Jews argued that Jewishness was not a religion, but a racial category, and that the Jewish race is biologically inferior. And now they are mixing up with the good races, the Aryan races. They are marrying, Jewish men are marrying Aryan girls, yes, and their biology gets mixed, so it's a danger. The belief in Jewish racial inferiority would later become Germany's justification for seeking to kill every Jewish person in the lands of Germany, the Germany occupied during World War II, whether the person practiced Judaism or not. If you're a religious Jew or you're a secular Jew, it doesn't matter, you're a Jew. And since you're a Jew and you have inferior biological traits, it's dangerous for you to live among Germans, Aryans, because your biology might mix and dilute the pure blood of the German people. And therefore, they started the Holocaust, which was a systematic mass extermination between 1939 to 1945, which resulted with the death of 6 million Jews, more than a third of the world Jewish population. So this is the end of this lecture. and thank you for listening.